Jacqueline Uhlmann is the woman working behind the scenes at Löwenbräukunst, an art space at an old beer brewery in Zurich. When you look at her CV, you realize how many positions she held in the art world. From studio manager at Wolfgang Tillmans in London, gallery assistant at Pressenhuber, member of the jury of the Swiss Pavilion at Venice Biennale, or fair manager at the Liste Basel, to managing Löwenbräukunst. She has done it all. So let's talk about it. Welcome to SwizzArtBizz. I'm Tanya, König, your host, and today we'll look at another Löwenbräukunst story, the one of Jacqueline Uhlmann. And I'm very pleased that she's joining me here in the studio. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, Tanya. Thanks for having me.
So I just laid out the many positions that you held in the art world. I claim that you just couldn't decide what you want.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit impressed by, oh my God, I really changed a lot of perspectives in my life, but I guess it's a little bit part the way I work. I'm always interested to see different perspective, different opinions, different location, and sometimes different countries.
So where do you think, where does this come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess, I'm very Swiss. I grew up in Switzerland. My parents are Swiss, but I guess there was always an interest about what's going on, what can we see and what can we change. And art was, I guess, maybe the moment for me to travel through the world and discover different stories.
Mm-hmm. I know that you were raised in a family that was not particularly interested or within the field of art. Your father was in the military, so totally different field. What sparked the interest in the first place? Like, was there a moment where you were like, oh, that's something I would like to pursue, or something that interests me?
Yeah, that's the story I keep on telling, which is really, it's an extraordinary story. I mean, as you said, my father was in politics, right-wing, military service, also working in the finance world. So there was really no art at all. The only object we had, more or less, at the wall was like some relics from the First World War. Mm-hmm. But my family was always engaged. And I guess the engagement for the society, then going to school and finding out what can we do, how can we change the world, was one of the issues which brought me to the art world. And my first great love during high school, he showed me actually the way into music, going to the museum. And also I had a very liberal high school. Uh-huh. It was a high school for economy and law, but it was always about, hey, there's a world outside. Mm-hmm. Keep your eyes open, keep your mind open. Also, you are a woman, you have rights. So I guess a lot of issue, and somehow I got into the art world.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. You said, so your father, he was engaged in politics, more on the right side, but just being engaged in politics is being engaged, and kind of like he also thought that he for him he was doing his best for the country or for other people, and that's what you kind of inherited.
Yes, of course. It's until now, I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is reading the newspaper. I would never miss any voting. And why am I in the art world? I mean, I also believe you can change the world with art, seeing the world through artistic eyes, working with artists, their mission, creation. I guess that's what I bring out of that childhood experience, and say, hey, you have an opinion, you can talk. You have also the right to change the system. I mean, even though it was more right-wing, but I mean, you can always find a way to bring up the positive vibes out of that.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at your beginnings. I mentioned you started working as a studio manager for Wolfgang Tillmans in London. So how did you find that job? I mean, studying at law school and then how did you end up there?
Hey, it was through a friend. He told me, and I always wanted, when I finished high school, first thing I did was like, let's go far away. So I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I would have loved to live somewhere else. And then I heard Wolfgang is looking for someone who actually speaks German.
And how did you hear about that?
That was through my boyfriend at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, hey, Wolfgang is looking for someone like you. You have experience, you are interested, you speak German. And I was like, Wolfgang, of course. I mean, he was an important figure, coming also from the magazine world, fashion, but also someone who is very engaged, in gay rights at that time. And also AIDS was a big issue. And he was standing up, and working for him in his studio was a very amazing experience. Also to see behind the scene of an artist and studio. Also, like, it's like a little organization. How, does he work with his photography? How much space does he need? How professional do we need to be? At that time, it was like suddenly we got very professional and a little, studio manager. I was actually like.
When was that?
That was early. It was when he won the Turner Prize, around 2000.
Around 2000.
Yeah, that was a great time also because he won the Turner Prize as a photographer, which was very unusual at that time. Also because he was struggling. Am I a photographer? Am I an artist? Am I a fashion photographer? Because he did all these photographies for ID, all these great magazine from the 90s. And I wanted to move on. So London was like my first step.
And what was it like to work with him, and how did it change your perception to art or photography or in general?
I guess it was a good moment also. I was working for Eva before that. So coming from the
Eva Pressenhuber?
Commercial part and then going into a studio, and you're also providing artworks for the galleries, but also providing artworks for the institution. But it was the organization. I realized I am more like a managing person. So I love to manage an artist studio. I would also love to manage a gallery, but more like in the back, not in the front.
So that's the experience you had at the gallery. You somehow realized, and in an artist studio you can do more of what you like.
Yeah, I mean, to understand, coming back to what you mentioned at the beginning, for me it was always important to understand everyone being part of that art world. Understanding a gallerist who needs to be commercial, an artist, who has his own vision, own idea. So to move on and understand and bring those ideas together, I guess that's what me drive to.
What drive?
Yeah.
Because that switch is probably quite big. In a gallery, it's probably more commercially driven. And then in the artist studio, I can imagine it's a bit more chaotic, or...
Yeah, he wasn't that chaotic at all, actually. He's a very structured personality. So maybe that's a bit his German roots as well. So everything was organized. There were 5 people working at that time for him. Actually, very German. So we got like 5 weeks of holidays. We got like extra paid, like a 13th salary. So he was always, engaged also about the people working for him. And maybe that's also something which could be interesting nowadays, how to run a studio and making the people feel comfortable. Or, you don't need to be like a poor little artist somewhere in a dark studio. You can be professional, successful, but also very social engaged.
And structured.
Yeah.
And how are these two jobs? Were they also like conflicting, these two roles?
Yes, of course. I mean, you have to be honest with yourself. So I'm not a good salesperson. So I always knew I understand someone telling me, I don't like that because of that. I was like, yeah, that's a reason, I understand. So that's how I realized, okay, I need to find my place where I can actually deal with all these different opinions. If it's commercial, if it's non-profit, if it's an artistic idea. I also worked for a museum, the Kunstmuseum Basel, where I got much more involved in curatorial work, which was also very interesting, do more research, going into books and history of museums. So, but it's for me to understand what does it mean to work with art and finding my way to make the world another place. So you need to understand every field.
So that was your aim, kind of like understanding every field, meaning also going into it. You knew that at the time already that you had to basically do everything to get a full perspective, or did it happen by chance?
It happened slowly. I think it always happens where you live. After London, I moved to New York. It was after 9/11. So we lived in a country going into the war.
Was that the feeling?
Yeah. And I remember everyone from Europe, all my friends, hey, sorry, I'm not coming to visit you. I don't want to visit a country who actually started a war.
Yeah.
And me and my friends, we went demonstrating like, okay, this is not right. But it was interesting also to experience the propaganda, which was really strong at that time, with the weapons of mass destruction. When you hear that every day, 20 times, you read it everywhere.
You start to believe.
At the end of the day, you realize, I want to say no, but actually, it's really working. It really gets into your brain. So again, also important time. I found my friends, we were really engaged. It was important for us to speak out. Hey, we don't agree with that, but we live now in a country which is actually in a war.
And what were you doing in New York?
I was working also for a gallery. Gavin Brown's Enterprise at the time, unfortunately, doesn't exist anymore. Also, one of the best places to work at that time. It was really, Gavin Brown was a little bit Sid Vicious of the art world. He made the best parties. We had a gallery next door, the famous dance floor of Piotr Uklansky, and the bar. So everyone was hanging out there. All my friends came after work. We met there. It was an intense time, and we are still very connected. Some people left New York. Some of my friends are still there. So, but also the situation, the political situation, brought us really close.
You also founded Donate Art Books, a project. It's kind of a philanthropy project.
Yeah. Yes. It's a little bit on hold, but the idea came up as traveling was always very important for me. Also going to places where people maybe do not have access to art the way as we do. So I was traveling twice to Syria before the war started.
Oh, wow. How come?
I guess it was through a friend who had some relatives over there.
Yeah.
And he was like, let's go and visit them. And I was like, okay, wow, yeah, let's do that. The first time we traveled through Turkey, which was also impressive. We visited people there, working in the art world at that time. It was already a little bit difficult. He was always like, don't give the address where you are based. And but still there was no war, but it was already a little bit tense at that time.
Yeah.
And I visited a place because of that project, because I was looking for places who need art books, because especially in the Islamic world, books, visual ideas of artistic presentation, it's difficult because the religion doesn't allow
a depiction of people.
Exactly. So, but it was like, okay, but at least I bring you some books, and then maybe someone found it interesting to have a look and gets an idea about other places, or at least also getting inspired to work within his religious or his tradition. So I was in Syria, and I was also actually, that's how I met Koyo at that time, a long time ago, who is now curating the Venice Biennial. She was in Dakar, and I was also in touch with her. So we had a place in Dakar where we were sending art books. And these art books, I collected them from museums, leftovers, or Pro Helvetia, the Swiss Arts Council. So the idea was just to bring it to places and, they could do whatever they want, if they want to build up a library or what. I was like, okay, maybe it helps to give someone or 2 or 3 people the chance to discover something they would not discover, and maybe change also a little bit that part of the world. So, but books are heavy to ship.
Yeah.
And also it's not easy, and once you enter in countries which might have a restriction, and who actually controls these books, and I didn't want to bring this institution into troubles. Censorship, So, but it's still a project which I would love to run again. It's just shipping books.
It's heavy.
It's heavy, it's really heavy and costs money. But it's a project which brought me also to interesting places, to Pakistan, to places, which... And then Syria, of course, it's still something I was very shocked when the war started. And I just actually wrote one of the curators I met at that time, hey, wow, what are you doing now? Because they left for Sweden. And they've been living there for the last 12 years. But she was like, I'm not sure yet what we're going to do. Going back, we haven't been back.
In all these years. And what do you find there?
What do you find? So I'm kind of curious to see. But of course, happy that at least there's a chance now for them to go back.
It's interesting. So it seems like you are, with this project, it's just one of the examples that show that you're someone that takes a lot of initiative. You just take things and do. I mean, I do it together. I always want people to be engaged. I keep on telling, hey, if you and me, it's much more than just you for yourself and me for myself. And just also I just want to keep projects rolling, Sometimes I'm like, okay, let's just do that and start and see what will happen out of that. I mean, so you kick things off, and sometimes you just...
I mean, it's... I don't like to keep things for myself. I think, hey, it's like a child. I help you with the first steps, and then actually when you can walk and see what the world brings. So looking back, I guess I always wanted to be a diplomat.
So that was your first career choice?
Yes, actually. And because I think that's what interests me, to bring people together and also bring out something of people. I believe everyone has something to give and to spread. And of course, within the arts, it's an amazing project because you not only speak, you have visual ideas, visual creations, and maybe sometimes also a little bit crazy ideas, and that's what interested me also.
Then you also did a master in art management, right? At CIS Foundation Management, Culture and Artistic Support Foundation Management. So it seems like you have this interest in the intersection of private and public sectors. So I mean, also if you say that you wanted to be a diplomat, it's also in the public sector. But in the end, why more within the public sector, not the private one? I mean, you could also end up in an auction house. Okay, you just said that you don't like selling, but maybe it would be more lucrative.
Of course. I think there shouldn't be such a big difference, also sometimes in terms of money. And, I think it should be much more relaxed, and relaxed means, of course, we do need the money. And sometimes I rather believe it's coming from the private than from the public, because the public for me has another motivation for the society. So to bring these two together was always important, not to be so strong. But of course, you need to understand both languages. So if you know, like when I read the newspaper in the morning, I also read sometimes the Blick because I need to understand the language of the people who are reading the Blick. So I think that's important to always understand and these different perspectives, and that's why I always swap a little bit between those two, and I always think, hey, we can. I mean, that was the good part about living in the States. You forget about you have to be private somehow. You know, there is no public government supporting any arts. It's all about the private world, some collectors, philanthropists. So not to be afraid of it. You know, I mean, there are people who want to give their money, who want to support. So then go for it. It's not a bad thing because the government sometimes has other issues to resolve, which are much bigger. Yeah.
So you think actually philanthropy within the art world is actually very important?
Yeah. So when I came back, it was after the States, I was like, okay, that's really something we should learn here, you know. And when I see now what happens in the world, also in Switzerland, you know, I feel like, okay, maybe we should bring up more initiatives by ourselves and not always wait for the government or any public service to say, hey, then we do it, you know, we stand up. And then maybe we also help the government. And they're actually happy to see, oh, wow. So it's not everything on our shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah, because now you're basically managing everything what happens at Löwenbräukunst Areal, as I mentioned, this old brewery in Zurich. And there you also have private and public actors in that building. You also have events where you try to seek the public, galleries that are for-profit commercial ones like Haus und Wirth, but then also Kunsthalle, institutions. So there again, you see that these private or commercial galleries are engaging for the public as well.
Yeah. I mean, it took some time at the beginning when I started. It's been 6 years because, you know, every tenant, every venue holder has his own ideas. We need more people to buy art, or we need more people to visit our programs. So it's like, oh my God, how can I satisfy all these different needs under, you know, one roof. Yeah. But then, you know, once we started talking, and of course there was also the pandemic time, which actually the beginning was hard for me because I just started and I was like, oh my God. But in the meantime, looking back, it was the best time to really, everyone had time. Nobody traveled. So we actually had time to talk about, okay, what actually do we share? What do we have in common? I mean, except that we show contemporary art or art in general. So that's how we figured out, we have all education program, or actually we are all interested in ecological issues or diversity, you know, and then we just realized it doesn't matter, commercial, non-profit. We also have the Micro Museum, which has also different directives within their ideas, but suddenly we realized, hey, we do have certain things in common, and our tool is art. So why don't we join forces and create a unique idea of which is now Löwenbräukunst, which is just, you know, like the idea of, hey, we work together, but we remain independent. At the very end, everyone goes to the Kunsthalle in the Löwenbräu, to Haus und Wirth in the Löwenbräu, to Migros Museum. And that's a little bit the idea, you know. But we have one voice.
And you organize, like, can you give, like, we have Zurich Art Weekend that happens there as well. So you were able to also engage these, what examples can you give there?
Yeah, so of course we have the commercial, let's say more the professional, not commercial, professional weekend, which is the Zurich Art Weekend, let's say the gallery weekend of Zurich. We have the open house coming up in April, where we will do guided tours in 13 different languages. But the idea is that we ask people out of their language community if they want to do a tour for their community. So that means they will speak in their language to their community. So that's also the community work. We, you know, because sometimes art a lot of people are afraid of entering a gallery or an art institution, museum, because they think, oh God, I need to understand. And that's something we really want to help to get over this. And if it's in your own language, it's already much easier, I guess.
It's more approachable.
Yeah, it's accessible also because that person maybe is not coming from the art world and just, explain 2 or 3 shows. And so it's a very lively moment, and we always enjoy it. And it's great to see sometimes, 20 or let's say 20 people coming from a Turkish community the first time in a museum, and to see their eyes and maybe 1 or 2 is coming back, and that's already, for me, we achieved our goal, so that they might come back. We also almost everything is for free. So the institution, the shows, the events. Yeah. Or we also have family days where we open our doors for families, all generations. And I guess it's also to make art accessible for everyone, not being afraid that you have to understand. I keep on telling people, hey, I don't understand every art piece. I don't understand every exhibition, but you don't have to. But maybe you find something you like and you want to learn more about, or you want to hear more about it. And that's already a lot.
Yeah, so you're trying to bring different demographics also and groups to the space. But is that also in what the interest is, let's say, of a commercial gallery? I mean, in the end, they need to sell.
I just had a discussion today because we do this Art Walk West, which is also like collaborative work in the Kreis 5, Zurich West. And we had last time, I think, over 40 people participating. I was like, oh my, it's quite a lot.
Yeah.
Also, and then I went, I passed at the gallery and it was like, hey, 40 people, and a lot of, especially a lot of people just moved to Zurich. And they just needed some connection. So that's why they think they came to the walk. Anyway, the gallerists was like, oh, I hope also they will buy one day some art. I was like, yeah, it's maybe the new generation. They have a different approach, looking at art collectors we have nowadays. They usually have a big history of many years. And I'm always curious to see, what about their kids? Will they also collect art? Maybe not. So what will be the next generation of art collectors or art supporters? And you have to be open because, like me, I did not grow up with a family collecting art. And now I do collect a little bit, but I'm working in the art world.
I also mentioned that you were a jury member at the Venice Biennale in 2019 for the Swiss Pavilion. What was your role there in selecting Charlotte Lobacht's curatorial proposal, and can you talk us a little bit through the criteria? What did you look at? How does that happen?
So we were a group of 5. I was the chairwoman at that time. So I did 2 biennials because we had this job for 4 years. We did it for 4 years.
So 2019 was the first?
Charlotte was the second.
Okay.
The first was Philipp Kaiser, and Charlotte was the second. We changed a little bit the system because before that it was the jury who actually decided about the artist representing Switzerland. And then we were very fast clear about, hey, we are professionals, but we should really give, let's say, a carte blanche to a real professional like a curator. And then the first time we started with Philipp Kaiser, who already changed some parts because he was like, does he need to be Swiss? Does he need to select a Swiss artist? I mean, he is Swiss, but he selected Carol Boff and the other, I forgot their names, but it was a Swiss and American couple. And Carol Boff, actually, she was born in Geneva, but never really lived there. So it was already some issues we tried to break. You know, the Swiss Arts Council also, it's a foundation, has very strong guidelines about the Swissness. And Charlotte, actually the same. I mean, she is Swiss, but I'm not sure if now she lives in Switzerland, but at that time she was still based, I guess, in Paris or just moved to Switzerland. But was also, for us, it was important just to we didn't want to be the ones to selecting an artist. And also that both of them had a carte blanche. We said, we give you a carte blanche, you decide with whom you want to work, who you think should represent Switzerland, which was, of course, also a little bit of a tricky. And at the beginning, it didn't really, we needed to find some really good arguments, but I guess in the meantime, it changed anyway. So we also started to change a very
strict institute.
Yes,
system.
exactly. To say, okay, let's open it up.
And is it still like that the jury selects a curator and then a curator chooses the artist, or was it
the last time they did an open call?
Yeah.
I mean, they really opened it up.
Yeah,
okay, everyone who feels like should send a proposal. I'm not sure about the Swissness anymore. I mean, I think there should be some Swissness still, but maybe it's because you've been living here for 5 years. You know, I guess
the connection.
Yeah, I think they changed, but I guess choosing a non-Swiss, you know, Switzerland has, it's still important to have this Swissness label somewhere on you. Yeah. But it was a great job, again, working with different people from the art world and finding, of course, as the Swiss system, having one opinion.
Together, consensus.
Yes, the consensus. Yeah.
It's very Swiss.
Yes,
with the Federal Council.
Yes, exactly.
From all different parties coming together, and then
also we were a mix, of course, of women, French, Italian speaking. You know, always remain that. Yeah,
making sure everyone is represented.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing.
I think it's really. I mean, you know, we all grow up with this kind of system, but once you are talking about this abroad, you realize how fantastic. And still, if I tell people we don't have a president, we have actually 7 members deciding about, you know, what they think is right or not, or making any recommendation. They can't believe it. It's like, really, that works? And you know. But of course, at the end, it's maybe 3 to 4, and then means okay. It's a democratic way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I make the same experience when I explain that we don't have one president, one king, basically.
Exactly.
And I mean, that I'm jumping a bit around in your career, in your CV. That was 2019. But before that, you also worked for a fair, for Liste, as a fair manager. So, as I said, all these different perspectives within the art world, be it fairs, be it gallery, auction house, you really saw it all. What did you learn from working for the fair?
Yeah, of course, it's the commercial part which follows me, even if I'm not a good salesperson. But of course, I mean, I remember when I started working within the arts, I told my father, you know, the art world is like any other market. You have a supply and you have a demand. You know, it's the same rules everywhere. So and working for a fair was great because I didn't have to sell art, but I mean it was about, you know, selling art, but it was especially about working with galleries. And for young galleries, you know, so a little bit of startup business. They just started, and they were all very excited when they came the first time to Basel. And you know, Basel is still the most important fair place. And showing them around, introducing them into the commercial art world, the big fair world. And most of the time they came with one of the artists, and then we needed to find an accommodation. And then, of course, I was traveling a lot, visiting other fairs and sharing ideas about, do we need fairs, or what could we change, or how can we support local local cities. They invited me once to Sao Paulo, and then I spoke about Liste as a, how engaged you need to be and how much vision you need. And then the questions they brought up after my talk was like, so commercial,
Really?
Can I show you my business plan? And I was like, hey, a business plan is great, but I mean, you need to be engaged. I mean, you need to have a vision. I mean, but of course, I realized also, living in Brazil, it's not making a gallery without money. It's like a hello. So it was a good experience to see different perspective again, that they all wanted to run a gallery, but it was not possible as an artist run. They were thinking, hey, I need to make money because I need to survive. So this was a great experience. And I also met a lot of amazing artists, and I'm still kind of connected with them. They still run a gallery. Some of them don't have a gallery anymore. Yeah. It was a great time.
Yeah.
And also a little bit being a diplomat again. Saying, okay, you come and maybe we can do this for you, and to understand how Switzerland works, and I also understand how their country works. And so I loved it. It was a great time.
Yeah, you mentioned in the beginning that you were explaining to your father as well, who the supply demand thing. I mean, that the art world also knows that as every other business market. So I was wondering, because in the beginning I mentioned your parents were not in the art world. So in the end, what does your father think now that you went into the art world, and could he understand that?
Yes, yeah, honestly, totally. I mean, I guess nowadays my father also goes to museum, operas, and at the beginning he started sending me, he cut out of the newspaper, hey, I read about this museum you mentioned and I found this article. So it was great, the interaction which happened, also make it more understandable for him. And yeah, I think it changed also his perspective. And also my mother's, of course, or my brother, but especially my father. I think it also changed his life a little bit. And he was actually the first to visit me in the States.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In New York?
Yeah. Of course, we needed to see the Ground Zero.
Yeah.
But he was like, it doesn't matter. I mean, you are my daughter. I come and visit you. I don't mind if that country, is actually in a war. Yeah. So, he tried to understand, and he does. And I think so. I think there's always a way. What I realized is, at the end, it's like a circle. That's where you started. It somehow makes sense, and what you bring with you during these years, even though I had no art experience and no art knowledge so far until high school. But now I can bring together my other perspective, which I have from my childhood.
You learned something from him, from the diplomat,
Exactly.
and he's now learning from you as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it all closes. And during your work for Lisa, you also emphasized the importance on focusing on emerging artists. How do you nowadays discover artists?
Hey, I lost track a little bit because now working for the Löwenbräu, it's a very institutional work. It's a lot about audience development, public engagement. Sometimes I miss it because before, I was hanging out with artists, or if there was a new space, let me go and see it. Also, the galleries, I was close at that time, like also the Karma International Girls. In the meantime, they're also professional big galleries, We all are getting older and somehow try to understand the new generation, of course. I always want to have an eye and ear open to understand, but they need to explain me now. Before it was like, okay, I can feel it. Yeah, I can, you were a part of it. Now I feel like, okay, yeah, totally, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's just more. I'm definitely more the senior, and the junior needs to explain me how it goes, how it works. And then you're like, oh, great, okay, yeah. I remember it was kind of similar at that time, but of course, your situation, it's different again to the situation we had. So it's a little bit that experience. Sometimes I miss it, but then it's also time, you know. Sometimes you have to let go. Make space.
Yeah.
Make space for the new generation. They have their own language. They move differently. I mean, also the time has changed. You know, when I was at that point of life, the world was really open. It was so open. I mean, it was like, hey, we are one. And if I look around now, I feel like, okay, yeah.
You feel like there's a lot of divide,
And
geopolitical
yeah, and
shifts?
close. I mean, somehow, you know, before, I mean, where should we? I mean, I felt like after high school, hey, should we go to the States, Australia? You know,
Everything was possible.
yeah, everything was possible. The world was open for an exchange, and now I feel like it's very protected. Look at Trump, you know, like okay. About the customs, all this, and it's a shame, but you know, it might be also a chance.
For art?
Also for art, you know, I mean, also for art in terms, it could be also an ecological reason. Do we need to travel? Do we need to have so many fairs? Ship all these works to that place, shipping it back. You know, maybe it's time to reconsider the world as one, of course, but also due to climate change, political reason. Maybe giving a strong voice again. You know, not make it. Of course, we all need to make money, and we need to live from something, but maybe it gets again more visionary. And can bring people together again. Yeah. So that's a little bit my hope.
Your hope.
Also for the generation of our kids, you know.
If we look a bit into the future now of Löwenbräu, we have a house constructive that will be moving in very soon. In English, you would call it Foundation for Constructive and Concrete Art. Next year, in fact.
Yeah.
Right. So how will this museum fit into the current programming?
So they have they're moving in 2 steps. So one is going to be now in May, and then the final move will be early 2026. We are really happy. I mean, for us, it's a big win-win situation, because I think they really fit perfectly to what we show and how we work, and it's a very enriching moment also to bring more public to the Löwenbräu, you know, because art, we also have a lot of contemporary art. It's not so easy to understand, and Museum House Constructive has already a strong voice, and they bring also a lot of public, even though constructive art is not something which everyone loves, but I have to say they're doing a great job, and I guess it will complete our program, because we are diverse and also a little bit hybrid, you know, but I guess it makes it more attractive for people rather than having one voice. And so people can choose once they are in the house, Löwenbräu, from commercial to institutional to very abstract to maybe videos. I guess it's very enriching.
Yeah, I was just about to say it's going to enrich the whole ecosystem as well, because the other ones can, if they bring an audience, you might just have an audience you might not have if the house wasn't there.
Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna have 30 years, Löwenbräu next year.
So 30 years of Jubilee next year.
Yes.
What are the plans then?
We had 25 during the pandemic, which was like, okay, great. So we started a lot of digital ideas, because we couldn't really
Time flies.
Yes, I know. We couldn't really go for a public event. So for next year, I guess we keep that digital ideas as well, because there's so much. I mean, the history, it's so big, but it's a known job for itself to go deep into the archive. Because there was no Löwenbräu company before. So but we do some digital work. I guess I want to hear a lot of voices, not only about the past, but maybe also voices about the future. I think it's also interesting. It's always great to hear stories 25 years ago about the big parties, but I guess maybe also do the switch. In which direction should we go? Do we have any duties, or can we take over something, or what do people expect also from a art center? And then for next year, let's see. We Museumhaus Konstruktiv will also have 40 years, so everyone is like, oh no, what are we gonna do? But maybe it will be an annual idea. Would be also great. And I think I would love to have something which will sustain
beyond that year.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know what it will be, but of course we will have some celebration, and that's of course. But let's see. I guess it should. Yeah, we want to join forces again, but they're now moving in, and it's not easy, because each institution has also. They have program,
their own interests as well.
And we have a lot of work. And then now Jackie is coming with Löwenbräu. Hey, can we do something together? And everyone's like, oh, yeah. So let's see. But in the meantime, we have some ideas. Sometimes maybe urban gardening. Maybe how can we make the neighborhood more lively? So there are some ideas. Or maybe just have artists being engaged in the public space of Löwenbräu, which I think would be also amazing.
So there are many ideas, but not much time left.
I know. We're already working on that. So no, that's what I learned from. I was like, okay, we start a year before, because it goes so quickly now. It's already.
Yeah, especially you have many ideas. So but the digital idea would be maybe having a platform where you have.
Like a channel, like the Louisiana channel, where they have voices from artists or the curators, or also public figures speaking about what kind of future plans they have. And I think that's something which is you can always watch again. And a celebration, it's nice, but it's like a unique event, and then
it's over.
Yeah, it's over. So also create something for the history also of Löwenbräu. It's a unique history, and before I started working there was no one really taking care of, and in the media. So I'm still searching and grabbing and finding, and it has a big history. Some good and bad moments, but I guess that's how everyone's life is.
And you're probably the perfect person to bring that to life, bring some initiative, and with all your experience. And we're very curious to see how you're going to celebrate these 30 years of Löwenbräu next year, and also with the moving in of Haus Konstruktiv and all the initiatives that you're kickstarting, basically. Thank you very much, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you a lot.
All the best.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and of course, you can check out all the initiatives on the website of Löwenbräu, or also follow their Instagram channel to find out more. And of course, if you're in Zurich, just pop by, just visit, go to one of the art walks, or to any of the events, or look at their exhibitions. And of course, you can follow SwizzArtBizz on Instagram as well, and you'll find us on all the podcast platforms, be it Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube you can watch the video.